Alright, welcome to the Final Fantasy Legend, also known as Makai Toshi Saga, the first game in the Saga JRPG series by Squaresoft, later Square Enix. Gonna be doing a run of the any percent no saw skill category. We'll get into a little more on what that means later on, but for now, let's go ahead and get started. Get introduced to the story quick, then name our hero and start the timer. So unlike most RPGs where we're all about saving the world or defeating evil, in this game we're just going on an adventure to climb a tower and try to find paradise, which is said to be at the top of the tower. And there's three different races you can play as in this game: humans, mutants, and monsters, all three of which we'll be seeing at least briefly during the run. And then for our hero character, we're going to pick a Red Bull, who's, in addition to giving you wings, is also a monster. And then go ahead and get started in... Oh, actually, hold on. Is there echoing? And then go ahead and get started in... Oh, actually, hold on. Is there echoing? Is there anything I need to fix on my end before getting started? Is there anything I need to fix on my end before getting started? Okay. We'll go ahead and get rolling then in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. We'll go ahead and Alright, so as soon as we get started, we are going to recruit a full party. We're going to get 2 albatrosses, which is another monster, and then a female mutant, whose weapon we're immediately going to take off just to speed up some battle menus. So the first few minutes of this run is going to be doing some RNG manipulation, just because this game has a pretty simplistic pseudo-random number generator that as long as you're starting it from a known state, like a hard power reset in this case, doing the same inputs in the same battles will always give you the same outcomes. And I'm going to be doing that to set up getting a meat drop relatively soon. So all three of the races you can play as in this game level up in different ways. For monsters, they level up by eating meat dropped by other monsters that you kill, which just evolves them into stronger forms. So again, our goal here is to climb the tower to find paradise, and the front door of the tower, which we just left the area of, is actually locked right now and sealed by a black sphere, which we need to find in this first world, the world of Continent. And if we actually went exploring and talking to more NPCs, we'd learn that the sphere is sealed inside a statue of a hero. In order to break that seal, we need to find and return the hero's sword, armor, and shield. It's forcing an encounter here outside this castle as part of the manipulation. And then those 3 pieces of equipment are held by kind of warring kings in this world. We're going to get the sword first. So this Red Bull encounter is kind of the main payoff to doing this manipulation, because it's normally a fairly rare encounter, and even if you get it, you're not guaranteed to get the meat drop. And then getting that lets me evolve one of my albatrosses into a slime, which is a monster family we're going to be seeing a lot of in this run, just because slimes have a really powerful skill called Melt, which in addition to ignoring certain types of defense, also heals the slime by the same amount of damage dealt, and that's really, really useful against bosses. You don't want skeleton meat because it's too high in bone marrow. Screen is pretty dangerous, because if I bump into one of these guards, I get into an unrunnable fight and have to reset. Ah. Well, that's unfortunate, but fortunately I do have backup plans for dealing with getting off my manab. Again, the main thing I was going for was getting that Red Bull meat drop in order to get a slime early, which is really useful for the next couple of required fights, and basically, it just means that I'm going to have to switched because the manipulation I had in full only went to through about the first 12 minutes of the run, and just pretty much means I have to switch to doing unmanipulated strats sooner rather than later, but it's all good. So we say hi to King Sword, and he challenges us to a duel over the sword. So he just killed one of my characters. Okay, he killed the mutant, which is exactly what I wanted. And for the mirror price of an active regicide, we now have the hero's sword, which is one of the 3 items we need to get the black sphere that allows us to enter the tower. So now that I'm off manipulation, I'm going to be saving the game pretty aggressively because outside of a straight RNG manipulated scenario, running away is pretty unreliable, and it works out to just be a lot faster and more consistent to just save very aggressively and then reset if I get into a bad fight that I can't run from quickly enough. Alright, so now we're going to make our way to the to getting the king's armor. One thing that's nice about this game as a speedrun too is that for the most part you don't really have to kind of learn what quest objectives are before you can just do them. Like if I actually went to visit the king who has the hero's armor, I'd find out that his fiancée had been captured by bandits, and he'd offer to give me the armor in return for rescuing her. I can just head straight for the bandits' hideout on the other side of the map. Because the monsters aren't super dangerous in this first world, I'm going to at least make multiple attempts to run away. Oop. Actually, no, that wasn't who I wanted to revive. I got thrown off by the order. Yeah, I revived my second albatross and then stayed at the end to recover both my health and my skill charges. Yeah, there's some pretty nice, snappy dialogue in this game. Like, I made it when you get revived. There's a pretty epic taunt that we'll be seeing in about probably 3 or 4 minutes from now, too, when we get the King's Shield. And it's hideout, pretty straightforward dungeon, just head straight for the boss. Alright, and if you guessed, the leader of the bandits that kidnapped the king's fiancée was a poisonous frog, you'd be correct. Pretty easy fight with the slime. You need to get another beat drop from the pea frog. Even unmanipulated, though, the odds of getting it are pretty high. There we go. And we use that to evolve our second albatross that we recruited right at the start into an Oni, which is it's a monster that we're not really going to be using for very long, but it's got a nice melee attack called Horn that it's going to be very useful for the next two forced fights. So after defeating the frog leading the bandits, we just need to head for the Armor King's castle to claim our prize. Thanks for luck, everybody. And yes, this game does have a Nobuo Uematsu soundtrack. It's the only one of the Final Fantasy Legend games where Uematsu did the entire soundtrack, so it's a very nice treat. Part of why this game has grown on me a fair bit, even though I didn't actually play it as a kid. I did read a fair bit about it in Nintendo Power and other stuff, though. What you saw just there was another bit of speed tech that the fact that I can save and reload the game anywhere I want to comes in handy, where I can get whenever you reload any NPCs in the area, go back to the tile they started on, so I can use that to get NPCs out of my way when needed. Alright, so we've got the hero's sword and armor, now we just need to get the shield in order to get the black sphere we need in order to enter the tower. But we find out that the Shield King has actually been murdered by his own steward. Once again, we're going to pass on skeleton meat because it's too crispy for our tastes. Fortunately, Steward doesn't make it very far before we catch up with him, and is also a total wimp. Is 20 HP. It's a miracle even survived 2 hits, and you're scum, you make me sick. That snappy put-down line I was referencing earlier. Alright, so now we head for the town of Hero, where the statue is. We can stay at the end to recover skill charges. With the black sphere. But the fiend who sealed the sphere in the statue isn't okay with just letting us walk off with it, and we have to fight Genbu, the black tortoise. The fiends in this game that rule the worlds we'll be visiting are all based on Chinese mythology in this game. I wish, Palmer. and that is the first boss down. I was hoping my Oni would take some damage from Genbu, because just like the mutant on the Sword King fight, I do want to get the Oni killed off at some point, and it's as good a time as any to start explaining that too. So part of why, if I'm not just totally manipulating the RNG in this game, that I'm saving really aggressively and resetting if I get into encounters I can't run from before taking a bunch of damage, is that this game has actually a kind of permadeath system. Under normal circumstances, there's actually a limit to how many times you can revive dead characters before they're just dead and can't be revived, and that's based on a stat called heart. Characters have 3 hearts by default, and you can buy more for a very large amount of money, but otherwise, if you run out of hearts, then you just need to... that character is gone, and you can replace them with a new one at an adventurers guild, like I did at the very start of the game when I built my party. Unfortunately, the new characters you can recruit are actually scaled based on the world of the game that you're in, so they gradually get stronger the more progress you make, and it works out kind of nicely that there's a couple points where if I just kill off characters and then replace them, I can just get stronger a lot more quickly than if I were to actually try to level up my party as is. I'm just fighting some of these encounters I get along here to try to kill off my Oni. I do need to get it replaced before I get to the next town. If I'd have actually been able to keep my manipulation going past the Sword King's castle, getting the Oni killed off would have been manipulated too. It would have happened on the in this tower around here. Alright, but we got that taken care of, so we can now resume the save scumming to get out of encounters. So yeah, between that permadeath system I just talked about and the fact that running away in an unmanipulated setting is pretty unreliable, that's why it just works out to be both faster and way safer to just heavily abuse the in-game save system. Because like Final Fantasy Legend 2 and 3 both have ways to build a party to make running away a lot easier. And I believe that's part of why, excuse me, the more competitive categories for those games don't allow full manipulation. But for this game, if you're going to speedrun it, you pretty much have to either manipulate via a pseudo-random number generator or via heavy saving and resetting like this. So it's kind of just take your pick. Alright, so we've reached the world of Ocean, the second major world. What is the Saw skill? That is a good question. Let me just do some preparations here and then we'll get into that. I'm going to replace my mutant and my Oni with 2 female humans whose weapons are going to take off to sell for money. Buy some X potions, which are a pretty strong healing item. And also buy a battle sword, which it's an actual weapon, but for my purposes it's a required story item. I could have also bought some HP increasing potions to give to the humans I just picked up, because the way human characters in this game get stronger is just by buying and using items to raise their stats. If I bought the HP items, that would make a few fights a little bit safer, but it could also slow me down as far as when I eventually need to replace those two characters too, so I've found it to be more consistent to just go without it. As far as why we're coming to this world too, if we'd have actually tried to go up to the next floor of the tower, we would have found it was sealed by magic of blue. So just like we needed the black sphere in order to enter the tower, we're going to need to find a blue sphere in order to keep making progress towards paradise. And if we actually talk to the NPCs in the world of Ocean here, we'd find basically clues that the sphere is being guarded by a dragon named Seirayu in an undersea castle. So we're first going to try to find a way to cross the ocean to and then go look for that castle. And if you guessed that our way to cross the ocean would be our own private floating island, you'd be correct. We actually fully explored the ocean. We'd get some clues that in order to go underwater, we need to find a hidden item called the air seed, but if we already know where it is, we can just go pick it up. I see Chad is pretty accurately explaining what the saw skill is too. It's a bug skill that certain monsters can use that you can also buy for humans to use, and the way it was probably intended to work is that it will instantly kill any enemy that is weaker than the saw user, but there's some bad math in the formula for it, and it actually will kill anything that is stronger than the user, so the saw will let you instantly kill pretty much anything in the game if you're low leveled enough, up to and including the final boss. And that bug is kind of so well known that they actually didn't fix it for the remake of this game on the Wonder Swan. Alright, so we picked up the air seed, and now we're just heading for a whirlpool that'll take us underwater. Some kind of rough luck with running away. So while I'm heading through the seabed towards Seirayu's castle, maybe now would be a good time to kind of explain too that even though it looks like I'm just kind of indiscriminately saving as part of dealing with the random encounters, there is a bit of tech to it, discovered by a runner named Catclaw, who's done a lot of research into this game, and that's that there's actually there's predictable patterns to how the encounters work. As I understand it, whenever I soft reset the game, my entry point into that pattern, which is based on the encounter rate for the area I'm in, is random based on a frame rule. But there's some situations where just based on the tiles after the reload that I get encounters on, I can kind of tell where in the pattern I am. And if I can figure that out, then there's some cases where I'll know that I've got kind of a large number of tiles I can walk before I could get into another encounter. Like if I get 2 encounters pretty close together, that's generally a sign that I've got some breathing room after that, so I can kind of relax on the save scumming a bit. So now entered Seirayu's castle, which uses the happy overworld theme for reasons, I guess. The Game Boy game, there's pretty serious memory limitations. Now, right now I do have 2 humans in my party, but my hero is a monster. This room right here has an elevated encounter rate, so I'm saving every 2 or 3 steps. Yeah, I mean, what I kind of like to say defines the Saga series of RPGs is just having really kind of wacky, different advancement systems. Like both this game and Final Fantasy Legend 2, there's no traditional levels or experience points. You get stronger via pretty different means that are specific to what race you are. 'Cause, like in this game, humans get stronger by buying potions that raise their stats. Mutants just randomly gain stats and abilities after battles, and then monsters evolve into stronger monsters by eating meat dropped after battles. As the series goes on, they introduce more races and classes like cyborgs and robots. We didn't actually see it, but that octopus guard right there bumped into me. It decided to move while I was moving too, so I got into an unrunnable fight. But this place in particular is way more speedrun friendly when I'm doing save and reload strats over full RNG manipulation. In a fully manipulated run, I would not be able to soft reset at all without breaking the manipulation route. So this is an optional detour, but it's well worth it because we get some grenades. Which is the main reason why I got the two humans, is being able to actually use weapons. And grenades, in addition to doing some pretty good damage relative to this point in the game, also hit entire groups of monsters. So we're coming up on the Seirayu's treasure vault, where the blue sphere is hidden. We just need to look where the lines cross in order to actually find where the sphere is hidden. So, like most of the boss fights in this run, even when we're not using the saw to instant kill them, the strats are still pretty simple and straightforward. In this case, I'm just having my slime use melt to drain HP, and then my human use grenades. Main thing I don't want to have happen is for the human that has the grenades to either get killed or paralyzed, but I put her in the 4th position, which should reduce the odds a decent amount. We need to get meat from Seirai. And then my starter character, the Red Bull, finally gets to evolve into a Woodman. Not going to be using the Woodman for very long, that's just kind of a passageway towards a better form. Alright, so even though we've beaten the Blue Dragon Fiend, Seirayu, we're not quite done with this world yet. It turns out that Seirayu only actually had half of the blue sphere, and we need to go find the other half, which is held by an NPC that, if we'd have been fully explored earlier, would have given us a hint on where to find the air seed. And this is where I'm going to need that battle sword that I bought at the weapon shop like 10 minutes ago. We get to do a math puzzle. This guy, who's actually a benevolent dragon in disguise, according to the lore, gives us the other half of the blue sphere. And these 2 resets I'm doing here are just to speed up the story progression. Because I'd have to leave the area, come back after talking to him the first time. Yeah, benevolent dragon named Ryu-O, or mad scientist who reprograms rock, paper, scissors themed robots to do his bidding. You decide. Alright, so now that we've completed and used the blue sphere, we can get out of here and resume climbing the tower to find paradise. Alright, and then there's a mysterious man in a top hat that's all over this game. I mean, he was in the first town and the first world. He's in several places in the tower. But in this particular case, I had to talk to him in order to actually be able to finish the run. Because for whatever reason, if I make it through the whole game without ever actually talking to the mysterious top hat man, then I'll get into a soft lock right before starting the end game. I'm assuming just because of memory variables that get reused at some point. So at this point you should probably be getting kind of the hang of how this game is structured. Our goal is to climb this tower and find paradise, but every about 5 floors or so we get stuck behind a sealed door and have to explore a kind of more expansive world in order to find a sphere that unlocks that door and lets us keep climbing. Some kind of rough luck with fleas, but again, that's where the save scumming comes in. When does this route talk to the Hat Man? I already did. It was right after leaving the world of Ocean. There's 2 different places where you can talk to him without having to take a single step out of the way. That's the first one. There's Top Hat Man again, although in this case it would, I believe, not only would it have been a little farther out of the way, I think he would have had more dialogue than if we talked to him on floor 5. Alright, so now we're at our next destination, the world of Sky. We actually talked to more NPCs around here, we'd find out that this world is ruled with an iron fist by the white tiger fiend, Byakko. And that Byakko recently killed the leader of a resistance that's opposing him, and that the resistance is now being led by the leader's 2 daughters. Stop at the weapon shop to get more grenades so that both of my humans can use them. Now we're going to go join Byakko's troops in order to kind of infiltrate and get more information. Also, the reason why I'm equipping just other stuff besides the grenades is just to get it out of my inventory, because you can only hold 8 items at once, and it just works out to be faster to just equip stuff like that versus selling it. Also, if you guessed that Byakko's goons were actually mosquitoes, you'd be correct. Let's get the first try meat drop, which I used to evolve my woodman into an imp. Ooh, I like 3 wishes. Right now I could really go for getting over this cold I've had for past few days. Alright, so after joining Byaku's troops, he gives us a mission to find Jean, who's one of the daughters of the resistance leader. We're gonna go find her in this remote house here, and then actually rescue her from Byaku's monsters. Okay, if I got lucky and got the saber cat to drop me, that would have saved me having to get it later, but it's no big deal. Alright, so we don't, after rescuing Jean, we don't actually have to talk to her in order to progress, but if we did, she would have told us that her sister Mireille, which is typoed as Millet in this version of the game, is being held in prisoner in Byaku's floating castle. So we're going to abuse our trust with Byaku to go try to find Mireille and rescue her. Kind of a long walk for this game, but fortunately there aren't any random encounters, and if the trolley NPCs bump into me, it just means dialogue instead of a fight. And if one of them blocks my way, I'll just do a save and reset to return them to their starting tiles. Because NPCs in this game not only move kind of in unpredictable directions, but also at an unpredictable rate, too. So in some cases I might get lucky, and if they block my way, they'll just immediately move again. Other times they'll sit there for a very long time. Alright, so now we've reached the prison. Fight some more saber cats, although the number of them is random and I only got one this time. I do need to get a saber cat meat drop to continue my route, so if I don't get it, I'm just going to reset and redo the fight until I do. A little annoying bit of randomness, but it's not really that bad. The odds of getting the meat are high enough that taking more than like 2 attempts is kind of uncommon, and I just jinxed myself. The number of cats isn't too relevant too, just because both my imp's fire skill and then the grenades that my humans have hit all monsters in a group. There we go. Alright, so I use the saber cat meat to evolve my slime into a jelly, which is basically the same thing, only better, as far as having more HP and a higher damage melt skill. Again, melt is a really overpowered skill. If you're like me and are only using it on bosses, because it does good damage that ignores certain types of defense skills, and also heals the slime based on the amount of damage dealt. Oh, and then story-wise, we also just found out that Mireille actually betrayed her sister and was working with Byaku, and Byaku was onto us all along and just kind of used us to get John. But and he threw us in prison, but like in most RPGs, escaping from prison is very, very easy. All I had to do was just bend the bars to my cell and be on my merry way. So I'm using, actually I should have done this on the last fight with an imp too, but I'm using Bother with my jelly not to lower its agility, not because I actually care about that, but just to conserve melt charges. Because there's a possible situation I might get into in, probably about 5-6 minutes where I might need a lot of melt charges in my jelly, so I want to conserve as many as I can. Alright, so after breaking out of prison to go resume looking for the white sphere, we're going to actually abuse a trick where if I go into the castle then just immediately leave, I actually get warped to the shrine where the white sphere is. And Byakko double crosses Mireille and tries to kill her, but Jean takes the hit. Now it's time to fight Byakko, the white tiger. There's one Bother there just to conserve a charge. And that is Byakko down. So Byakko destroys the white sphere to keep it out of our hands, but it turns out the sphere he found here was actually a fake. And Mireille crying heartful tears, which is the name of this song, by the way, for her sister that sacrificed herself. Her tear becomes the real white sphere. Quick stop at the end to recover my melt charges because I only had 4 left after Byakko, which isn't quite enough for what I might need on the next battle after this. I don't normally like to stay at the end there because for reasons, if you go into a town and come out after defeating Byakko, because normally there's no overworld no overworld encounters, but if you reload the map, they come back. So it's a lot faster to just go straight back to the tower if you can. But since Byakko killed both of my humans, I'm gonna need a lot of melt charges for the next story battle. I wanted to stay at the end just to make sure I don't have any trouble. Yeah, Heartful Tears along with the title screen theme and the victory theme get reused in Final Fantasy Legend 2 and some of them in Legend 3 as well. As do these fish statues I'm walking past here too. In this game, they're just kind of decorations that in a couple optional areas of the tower I'm bypassing have hidden items or trolley battles hidden in them, but in Final Fantasy Legend 2, they're actually an optional boss at one point. Yeah, Holly, that's one of the things that I think gives these games a lot of their charm, is just kind of how goofy it is to have fantasy and sci-fi weapons just unironically side by side. Like you've got dragons breathing fire, humans swinging swords, and then other humans throwing grenades, all in the same party. Wrong turn there. Alright, so we're closing in on our next destination. The World of Ruins, not to be confused with the World of Ruin from Final Fantasy VI. So the World of Ruins is basically post-apocalyptic Tokyo. It's a lot more blatant in the Japanese version, where a lot of the landmarks and other areas are actual places in Tokyo in the real world. So the fiend in this world is Suzaku, who's the red bird. I think also known as the vermilion bird. I think that's what the name of the constellation the mythology comes from is. So we're going through this subway to basically avoid Suzaku, and we happen upon a girl who's under attack by ants. This is the fight where I wanted to have at least 6, preferably more melt charges on my jelly. I think they have a little under 300 HP, so depending on how many of them I get, I might need 6 or more. And if I didn't have enough melts, then I would be pretty much stuck. I would either have to keep resetting until I got like fewer adamants, or I'd have to leave and go stay at an inn somewhere. We didn't actually see it, but because I got lucky, but Suzaku, the boss of this world, is actually a random encounter on the overworld, and at this point he's totally invincible because of a force field. We head into this town here, and we head into the bar. We find out that we've actually just happened upon the headquarters of another resistance, this one against Suzaku, and that the girl we rescued from the Adamants is Sayaka, who's the sister of Socho, the leader of this resistance. And Socho immediately puts us to work on getting some components in order to build a machine called Erase 99, which will neutralize Suzaku's force field and allow us to actually fight him. And he also gives us a bike and let us ride around in style in this post-apocalyptic world. So the bike lets us actually move on top of these ruined city tiles, and as long as I'm on top of these tiles, for the most part, I actually can't get into random battles with Suzaku, so I try to hit as many of those as possible. And our first destination is a hidden town called Akiba, based on Akihabara in the real world. We find the ROM we need for Erase 99. Before we leave, we're also going to pick up a revive item, which lets us do what we think it does, revive a dead character. Akiba is invisible, but if we'd have gone to a library in the center of this world, we would have gotten some clues on where to go to find it. I should have parked my bike outside the town of Amayoko, another locale in Tokyo, to get a board, which is the next piece of Erase 99. But also we want to stay at the inn to get our melts back, and also hit up the Adventurers Guild here to replace our 2 dead allies with a Stone Man and a Chimera. The Stone Man we're just going to be evolving into a better monster relatively soon, but the Chimera has a really strong melee attack called 3 Heads, which is going to be very useful for the next couple battles. The revive item is you could technically consider it safety, but the odds of me needing it are much higher than not. in order to not need the revive, I would have to make it all the way to the end game without my hero character ever dying. And at this point, once I'm past Byakko, my hero, who's the imp, is pretty much dead weight at this point. His attacks don't actually do damage to any of the monsters here. So I don't really care if he dies or not. Oops. Ride our motorcycle into the bar. Talk to Socho. Tells us that the last component we need for Race 99 is plutonium. In order to produce the 1.21 gigawatts needed to destroy the force field. We try to sneak out and get the plutonium on our own, but Socho and Sayaka won't have any part in that, so they come, or at least Socho comes along. Oh, and yeah, if either of my humans had still been alive after Adamance, I would have actually used the overworld encounters with Suzaku in order to get them killed off before getting to that guild. Suzaku's Flame Breath attack does like 180 damage against characters, and those humans only have 60 HP, so it works out reasonably fast to get them killed off. But optimally, they either one or both of them gets killed by Byakko, and then the other two Adamance. So we use one of the hidden tunnels to get to the nuclear plant. I do know it's gigawatts, by the way. It's gigawatts and Back to the Future. We have a forced battle here with an evil eye. And this is also, like in Final Fantasy Legend 2, the most obnoxious place that I have to force a meat drop. This is probably, I don't know what the exact odds are, but this feels like the lowest one. So we're just going to keep reloading until we get the evil eye meat, which is very, very much required for my route to work. I really love the eyelashes on this eye. I mean, in Final Fantasy Legend 2, the eyeballs are a lot more gruesome looking, with having like dangling optical nerves behind them. But in this game, they're just floating eyes with eyelashes. All right, so we got second try evil eye meat, which isn't bad, and we used that to evolve the stone man that we just picked up into a pudding, which, in addition to being a very delicious dessert, is also the strongest member of the slime family. It has over 700 HP and a really strong melt attack. This is kind of also the turning point in the run too, where I'm just getting way more powerful than the bosses I'm fighting, because now we find the plutonium is guarded by a friend from Final Fantasy I, Warbeck. But thanks to the power of the three heads attack from my Chimera, and then also the melt attack from my pudding, I'm just going to absolutely demolish Warbeck. He has 1,000 health. Yeah, Warbeck is in Final Fantasy Legend 2 as well, and I really love that even though it's the same sprite, it has a number 2 decal on it to indicate that it's Warbeck Mark II. It's called Machine, by the way, because the Japanese name is Death Machine, which is also the Japanese name for Warbeck in Final Fantasy I. So if we actually went back to base at this point, we'd find out that Suzaku attacked the Resistance base while we were at the reactor and killed most of the Resistance fighters, and then kidnapped Sayaka and took her to this version of the game, a skyscraper. In the Japanese version, Shinjuku subway station. Also, I just kind of glossed over that Socho sacrificed himself to get us into the reactor core. I don't think they explicitly say why exactly Sayaka was kidnapped, but I'm assuming it's because of Suzaku just wanting to lure us into a trap. We're basically the only remaining resistance fighters that weren't at the base. And yeah, this dungeon is pretty pretty confusing if you're playing this game blind, just because there's a lot of required secret passages, and there's these dark rooms where you have to kind of bump around. Fortunately, at least all but one of the ones that are required to get to the boss room are just escalators and nothing else. Yeah, there's a fair number of sprites that get reused in the sequels, like the magician family of monsters becomes Apollo in Legend 2. This cute little slime sprite I'm walking around as right now becomes Mr. S, or Sensei is your character's trainer in Legend 2. Where the music starts getting really intense too. Again, this is an Uematsu soundtrack. Never ceases to amaze me just how good that man was at being able to convey emotions through music and with kind of limited resources like on the Game Boy or Super Nintendo. Faux spikes here. Do anything. This is the only somewhat complex dark room. This run hasn't been too great overall as far as runaway luck, because like I said a while ago, even though for the most part I'm just kind of indiscriminately saving every few steps so I can reset out of bad fights I get that I can't run from. If I get like a particular two fights relatively close together that I do run from, that'll generally tell me that I can walk a decent number of steps after that in safety. So if I ever get into that situation, I'll go a little easier on the save scumming for a while. I've almost caught up to Suzaku's hiding on a subway car of all places, because again, that doesn't make too much sense in the English version, but in the Japanese version, this whole dungeon is Shinjuku subway station, which is one of the biggest subway stations in the Tokyo area. Fortunately, the inside of the subway cars have kind of a low encounter rate, which is good because they tend to be with large groups of monsters. Be the last one. Alright, so we've at last cornered Suzaku and we use Erase 99 to actually be able to fight him fair and square. It's like with Warmech, this is not too difficult to fight just because of just how strong my monsters are at this point. Generally only a 2-turn fight. Alright, and with the defeat of Suzaku, Sayaka at last gives us the red sphere that we came to this world in search of, and we're on our way. So around this point, if we were exploring more optional parts of the tower and talking to more NPCs, we'd learn that the 4 fiends that we've defeated at this point have a boss named Ashura, who's a recurring character in the Saga series. I do like how he gets progressively demoted as the series goes along, because he's a very major antagonist in this game. In Final Fantasy Legend 2, Ashura is the antagonist of the first major story arc, and then in Final Fantasy Legend 3, he's basically an enforcer for a stronger boss. Yeah, like some of these monster names relative to the sprites they're using are pretty good too. Like we have that pea frog sprite, which is like a gecko or something that's now a dinosaur. If we go left at this point instead of right, we'd find a library that would also give us some hints that Ashura might not be calling all the shots in this story too, but we'll worry about that later. Right now we want to stop Ashura and find Paradise. At this point, the run chance is just pure RNG. At the very beginning of the run, I was able to manipulate it, but for about the past hour or so now, it's just been straight up RNG. Our other chance to top Hat-Man if we didn't do so on the 5th floor. Again, I need to talk to him in the tower at least once in order to actually be able to finish the game. It's just the nature of the game. Even if I hadn't gotten off the manipulation because of getting into an NPC triggered fight, about 2 minutes in, the manip route would have ended about the 12-minute mark of the run. It's based on my splits. Getting off the manip early cost me probably about 4 or 5 minutes total. So Ashura basically offers to let us take the place of his 4 fiends, but we're not okay with that, so we fight back. I have to reset because I ran out of melts. Let me move my pudding to the back slot, or actually to the front slot, to try to keep the other characters alive a little longer. I do actually want Ashura to kill off my Chimera and Jelly so that those two can be replaced, but Ideally, not until they've actually gotten a couple attacks off. Alright, there we go. My Chimera is still alive, but it's gonna force a random encounter here to get it killed off. Door to Paradise right in front of us isn't going anywhere. Alright, there we go. But Ashura had one last trap in store for us with a pitfall that takes us all the way back to the base of the tower. And this is where that revive I picked up earlier comes in, as far as reviving my starter character. And I replace my Chimera and Jelly with gummies, which are not quite as... they're slimes, not quite as good as puddings, but they're good enough for my purposes for the rest of the run. But via the power of friendship and the forest spears we picked up, we're actually able to activate a secret stairwell that goes around the outside of the tower instead of inside, which is going to be our express elevator back to the top. And as soon as we go back in the tower, we get to refight first Genbu and later the other three fiends. And the Genbu refight is the last meat drop that we need for the run. We use that to evolve our hero QFG into a beholder. Despite not really, despite being an eyeball enemy, uses the slime sprite. Beholder is really nice because in addition to having a nice beam attack, also has the ability to use gazes that inflict certain kinds of status conditions. One of which is going to be very, very nice for the next three boss fights, which are the refights with to the fiends. Because the second gaze attack actually inflicts stone, and none of the fiend refights are immune to that. And that's really, really nice for routing too, because if I actually had to fight the remaining three fiends just through damage, that would cause problems with my belt charge supply for being able to actually beat the final boss. Kind of a bit unfortunate that the final dungeon of the game is pretty repetitive as far as just kind of climbing these escalators over and over again, but they do what they can to kind of give you some variety as far as the map designs gradually changing as you get higher and higher up. For the fiendry fights where I'm just using Petrify Gaze, I also have my my slime monsters use their bother command, which it reduces agility. It's just basically an empty turn, so that if one of the slimes outspeeds my beholder, that I won't waste a metal charge. Why bother? Why not? Give Winnie the Pooh had some choice words about that. All these cameos by Apollo from the next game. For whatever reason, they don't actually update the floor counter during the final ascent. Definitely a fan of that dissolve animation for the bosses, by the way. Very ahead of its time for 1989 when this game came out. Along with there being an actual boss theme, too, which not all really old RPGs like this had. Some people talking about Saw again, just a reminder of what Saw is in the context of the category rules. Saw is it's a monster skill and also a weapon you can purchase for humans to use that inflicts instant death. And the way it was likely intended to work is to instantly kill enemies that are weaker than the Saw user, but it's bugged in a way that it actually kills monsters that are stronger than the Saw user. So especially in a speedrun context, if you use the Saw on bosses, you can kill them in one hit. That works on anything in the game up to and including the final boss. It should be pretty obvious by this point that Ashura wasn't the true culprit for all the chaos across all the worlds we've been visiting. That something else is manipulating things behind the scenes. I really like this particular screen at the top of the tower too, with the limitations of Game Boy graphics. They just gradually darken the gradations in the background to kind of show you ascending into the stars. Alright, and with that, we've at long last reached paradise. Who is standing between us and what we seek? It is Top Hat Man, who, it turns out, actually is the creator of our world. In the Japanese version, it's way more blatant, and he's just called Kami, or God. We find out that the creator created Ashura as part of a game to amuse himself by challenging us and others with danger and death, and that we're the only people to finish the game. But we're not too happy with being used like that, so we challenge God to a fight. That's to this boss theme too, which we actually get to hear a full loop of because of not using Saw to one-shot him. Time's coming up, by the way, too, although usually about a 6-turn fight. I like the attack names for the creator too, like he has one called Repent. Like pretty much every other boss fight, this is pretty simple because of Melt making it so that I can't die as long as I have Melt charges left, since Melt heals my slimes for the same amount of damage dealt. Repent. I think time should be on the next turn. And time. Alright, and having defeated our creator, we kind of decide that paradise isn't maybe quite for us, and just decide to just to head back home. I guess the true paradise was the friends we made and then discarded, and the meat we feasted on along the way. And for whatever reason, in the English version of this game, there's no actual credits too. There are credits during these flashback scenes in the Japanese version, but we just get the straight up flashbacks in English. So 2 big shoutouts I wanted to give to. First, shoutouts to Baku0, who's the record holder for this and every other category of Makai Toshi Saga, the Japanese version. Probably about 80-ish% of the routing I'm using here comes from his videos. Also, shoutouts to Catclaw, who's the record holder for any percent on the English version, who cracked a lot of the RNG manipulation tech in this run. A little disappointed I didn't get to show that off in full at the start of the run, but we got the important part, which was our first meat drop. If I'd have actually been able to keep the manip going, it would have saved me probably about 5 minutes. This would have been more like around a 1:10 if I'd have actually kept the manip going, but it would have only lasted up until I was just about to enter the second world, the world of Ocean, and then I would have ended the manipulation there by design. Yeah, and I guess thanks to High Spirits and his crew for having me and for putting on this awesome marathon every year. As an organizer for the main RPG Limit Break on this channel, I very, very much appreciate a well-organized event like this that lets a lot of other cool RPGs get shown off to a wider audience, and the fact that it's not for fundraising and just for fun means just a lot more games get shown that might not otherwise too. And see you again. Even in the Japanese version, it still says "see you again" in katakana. I like how it looks pretty much like Mr. S saying "see you again" and buy Final Fantasy Legend 2, so we can see you again. All right, so with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off and hand it off to the next runner. So again, thanks for having me, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of the marathon.